What's going on, everybody? It's your boy BJ, the DJ. You are now tuned into the rewrap. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. And you can also find the rewrap on all major streaming platforms. So tap in with us on one of those. Also, last but certainly not least, if you have not touched base with them guys at Over the Top with Chad and Tony, make sure you tap in with those guys as well. You can catch me on there as a recurring guest talking about movies and nostalgic wrestling. Now, if you have been paying any attention to any of the previous episodes, you have heard me talk about this particular album that I want to talk about today. I feel like this is not a hot take. I feel like Reasonable Doubt is the greatest body of work to ever be produced in hip hop. I say that because Reasonable Doubt came out at a time when storytelling was huge in hip hop, right? I feel like from start to finish, that entire album tells a story. It paints us a picture of a lifestyle that some of us can really only imagine, right? And I feel like Jay does a fantastic job of painting that from start to finish. I'm the biggest Jay-Z fan in the world, at least one of the biggest Jay-Z fans in the world. I have mentioned him in my top 3 category numerous times. And, oftentimes, depending on who has a project out, he can be in that number 1 spot. But I'm a fan of his music in general, not just Reasonable Doubt, but I do feel like Reasonable Doubt is the greatest body of work ever produced in hip hop. If I'm rating my Jay-Z albums, I've done this as well. My favorite Jay-Z albums, it'll go Reasonable Doubt, Blueprint, and the Black Album. Not that I'm not a fan of his other work, but those 3 particular albums I can listen to all the way through without any problems, without any skips, without any lookovers, right? I'm a big fan of how those 3 particular albums have changed the game in hip hop. So, there were 4 singles produced off Reasonable Doubt, and one of these is my all-time favorite rap song of all time, and that's Dead Presidents. On Reasonable Doubt, there was a Dead Presidents 2, so some of you may be familiar with the original version of Dead Presidents that was released as a single. Dead Presidents 2 is just slightly different. It's got a couple different verses, but overall, the instrumental and the concept of the song stayed the same. You also got Can't Knock the Hustle with Mary J. Blige, another, pop rap collaboration that oftentimes gets overlooked. Ain't No with Foxy, not one of my favorite songs on the album. It's a little bit, I'm not a big fan of the pop songs that Jay-Z puts out, and that was about as pop as it gets for that time frame in that era. But Foxy was one of the hottest female rappers in the game at the time, so it made sense for them to collaborate. And also Feeling It's got a real laid back vibe to it. Definitely a different single than the other 3, but the way Jay kind of soaks into that beat and rides it, and the cadence he carries on that song was definitely not done by other artists, and Jay did it well. So those were the 4 singles that album produced. Now, one thing about Reasonable Doubt, it was Jay's debut album, but it was also distributed through Priority. I think this is the only Rockefeller Records release that was released through Priority. After that, they went on to Def Jam with In My Lifetime, and the other albums after that, they formed their partnership with Def Jam. I thought that was a little different when I was looking at it. As far as the production goes on Reasonable Doubt, it doesn't really get any better if you are a hip hop fan. Now, of course, the legendary DJ Premier, you had Clark Kent on there, you had Ski, and one other on here that I really thought was weird. I got to looking at it, it said DJ Irv, and when I did my research, that turned out to be Irv Gotti. So Irv Gotti was involved with Jay-Z in the early days. I thought that was really neat. Guest appearances, of course, Memphis Bleak was on there. You get Memphis Bleak's kind of debut and coming of age. Sauce Money, he was a ghostwriter for several artists. He had a lot of success in that field, but never really had the success as a solo artist that I think he may have wanted, right? Of course, you had Mary J. Blige, Foxy, and you had Mecca. The artwork for this was done by a guy named Say Adams. Now, he also would produce covers for the likes of the Beastie Boys, Public Enemy, LL Cool J. He's legendary for his work in hip hop design. He's also the one notable for creating the Chappelle Show logo. I thought that was a really fun fact, a really cool fun fact as well, that he created the Chappelle Show logo. This album debuted 23rd on Billboard's US Top 200, and has sold almost 2 million copies to date. I thought that was kind of odd that it had only sold about 2 million, but it had a very good first week back then. Several publications have listed this as the greatest hip hop album of all time. I'm not a publication, but I would agree with that strong heartedly. So, how'd we get Reasonable Doubt? Let's talk about in the beginning of how it came about. Jay-Z was discovered by Jaz-O, and put Jay on his single for Hawaiian Sophie. That was 1989. And then Jaz-O would be dropped by his label. Jay was hustling, linked up with Big Daddy Kane for a posse cut called Show Improve, which also included Oh Dirty Bastard, Sauce Money, and a few others. Jay was getting a little bit of exposure, but was still having trouble securing a label deal. Meanwhile, Jay links up with Dame Dash. We all know the history of those two, and he starts selling tapes out the trunk. He secured a deal with Payday Records for the first single, In My Lifetime. But after that, some shady business dealings, Jay and Dame took the money and started Rockefeller Records. 1995 and 96, Jay boosted his profile by working with artists like Mike Geronimo, another very underappreciated MC. Also Big L, rest in peace to Big L, another very unappreciated and dope MC that left way too early. But they started working together on a few projects or whatever. Rumor has it before Big L was actually killed that he was close to signing with Rockefeller Records. And could you imagine the collaborations we could have got from those two? So the album was recorded at D&D Studios. The significance of D&D Studios is that it was actually purchased by DJ Premier, and you would have a who's who at that time period come through and record in that studio, from Foxy, Big, Fat Joe, Nas, Gangstar, of course. Fat Joe did his Don Cartagena album at D&D Studios as well. Big L's final album, The Big Picture, was recorded there, and so was Nas's I Am. So a lot of history at D&D Studios, but this is, again, early stages of D&D Studios, and that's probably has a lot to do with why DJ Premier was so involved in Reasonable Doubt. So Reasonable Doubt, the track list. I don't think I'm going to go through every song on this track list. I don't think that's important. But what I will do is I will touch on some of my favorites, some of the ones that stand out the most, and some of the ones that I feel like are the most important as to why this album is so great to me, right? But from the jump, we start out with Can't Knock the Hustle. We get the Mary J. Blige assisted Can't Knock the Hustle. But for a new artist, getting Mary J. on an album was a big deal, right? Method Man's debut album, he featured Mary J. But to get Mary J. on a song was a big deal. One significant thing about this particular track is that it was produced by a guy named Nobody, and he made this beat at his mama's house. And I thought that was pretty cool because, in-house studios are a big deal now, and like any rapper who has put together a project at some point has a story about how they made something in the basement or made something in an odd place, and it turned out to be something golden, right? He would also get some assistance from a producer named Sean Kane, and the only other work I've seen from this guy was Jay linked back up with him for the American Gangster Project. So, again, you get Mary J. Blige on the hook for this, and this kind of paints the picture of how the project's going to go, right? For all my battle rap fans, that Don DeMarco sample you hear in a lot of the URL battles actually was pulled from Can't Knock the Hustle. This song heavily flooded with jewelry references and talking about cars. Really nice track to start the album. Another cool thing about this particular track is you get a reference to a future hit for Jay, with the Money Ain't a Thing course is actually the end part of a verse on this particular track. So definitely a very nice way to start the album off. And like I said, really paints the picture on how the album's going to go. Politics as usual. I like Jay's flow on this track. It's a slow, strategic type flow. Ski produced this one. You really get a lot of that mafioso style that was becoming very popular back then. A lot of rappers were doing that, but I don't feel like any of them did it better than Jay, right? I don't think, Biggs was nice. The mafioso style would become synonymous with New York rap, particularly like the Wu-Tang Clan, and Jay and Big and a bunch of them. But very few people did it as well as Jay did. But this song, you get that. You get a lot, again, heavily flooded with jewelry references. I feel like this type of style was what kind of created a whole subgenre of hip hop music that would later come with Cash Money and No Limit. I feel like it was kind of fathered in this time period with these types of mafioso style bars. So Politics as Usual is another one of my favorite tracks off of this particular album. One of my least favorite songs on here, and it's not, I'm not a big Notorious B.I.G. fan, but I do love the story behind Brooklyn's Finest, about how Jay and Big was sitting at a table and there was a notepad sitting in the middle of the table, and they both kind of sat there and looked at the notepad, and it was one of those like, I heard you don't write, but I want to find out for sure. Because Big was also another one who was rumored to not have written much down. He would also go off the top like Jay. So I like the back and forth style on the song. It's not one of my favorite songs on the album, but I do like the legendary collaboration with Big and with Jay. We would not get very many of those at all before Big would pass, but I don't. I'm not huge on the song, right? I won't skip it, but I'll listen to it. But I don't go finding Brooklyn's Finest. But I do like the story behind it, and also like the style and how they finished each other's lines and how they would go back and forth on the song. So really thought that was dope. So let's talk about Dead Presidents again. My favorite rap song of all time, produced by DJ Premier. You get the Nas sampled, rumored to be the first track recorded for this album. The Nas sample was taken from "The World Is Yours" off the Illmatic, another classic, arguably Jay-Z's best work in regards to storytelling. I love everything about this song, right? There is nothing about this song I will say wrong. Just the way he paints the picture from start to finish of living the fast life, having money, doing whatever, to then dealing with revenge and retaliation and get back, and just a very dope picture he painted with words. And again, it complements the beat that Primo put together and the sample. Just one of the dopest tracks ever made. So can't say anything negative about Dead Presidents, and I will not, and I will argue with you about this not being the greatest song of all time. So definitely Dead Presidents, the greatest rap song of all time and my all-time favorite. So another dope track I really appreciate on here. I actually listen to this song quite a bit also, is D Evils. Again, another one is just kind of telling you the struggles of being in that life, and dealing with the complications of maybe a conscience that's developing. Really dope how they put this one together with the Murder Was the Case sample, the Illuminati sample. DJ Premier, I mean, he really put together a dope set of instrumentals for Jay to really ride on this one, man. D Evils, um, definitely a super dope song, right? Another cool concept song on here was called 22 Twos, and it was basically like it was a skit slash song. It was kind of like a live performance that was studio recorded type thing. And he's rapping, 22, he's rapping the word two 22 times in each verse. And it was a really dope concept. He would then go on to do 44 fours later on in like a freestyle. I don't think it was ever released as an actual album, but really thought that was a dope idea, dope concept. Can I Live? This was the one that was produced by DJ Irv, which was Irv Gotti. Can I Live? What I love about this was how slow Jay rapped on this. And I loved the horns that came in this instrumental and how it built. This was a super dope track. Again, same style flow on it, but it was slowed down. And I thought it was dope how he modified his flow and his cadence on this particular track to really make it sound great, right? Um, Friend or foe. This is Jay getting back to the storytelling mode. What I like about this song was the story itself. It's about a robbery that goes wrong. The ops show up. Jay had to remind them that he's that guy. It was produced by Premier. Really great job of complimenting Jay-Z's flow throughout this entire album. This was no exception. Ends up Jay not only not getting robbed, but also robbing the robbers. So I thought it was pretty dope. Again, great storytelling, great build up in this song. It keeps you on the edge. It's kind of suspenseful. Friend of Foe 2 would come out, or Friend of Foe 98, I think it was called, would come out on In My Lifetime Volume 2. So I thought that was pretty cool. Or In My Lifetime Volume 1, sorry. I thought that was pretty dope that they went back and revisited this particular scenario on the next project. So yeah, another dope song, Friend of Foe. Definitely a dope. So Coming of Age. Coming of Age is the one that features Memphis Bleak for the very first time. This is our first glimpse of Memphis Bleak. Um, he's probably the longest tenured Rockefeller artist, right? Talk about Bleak. I mean, he put out 3 gold albums. Biggest singles probably is "That Your Chick," which featured Jay, produced by Timberland, was a big song for him. Not he put out really good albums. I wouldn't say that there's anything memorable from Memphis Bleak that I just, oh man, he's bars. But he was flashy and he was fly. He was groomed to kind of be the little protege under Jay, but he would make his own career on his own. 3 gold albums, competing with a heavy area like New York, was really dope. And I wouldn't say that he depended heavily on Jay to sell records. I would just say that the influence or the association of Jay was probably pretty helpful for Bleak. But all in his own, you know, Bleak didn't have a bad career at all whatsoever. But this is our first taste of what Memphis Bleak is capable of doing and coming of age. And I don't think he disappointed this particular song. It's groomed to be just like his career would go. Jay's the big homie. He's kind of pulling Bleak in. And one of the most memorable lines from Bleak is Jay goes, let's ride around a while. Here's the thou. And Bleak goes, a G, I'll ride with you for free. I want the long term riches and bitches, Jay. And the cool thing about that particular line is when they do it at live shows, Jay would actually pass Bleak money and Bleak would toss it into the crowd. So brings the show element into it as well. Really dope song, coming of age. So definitely a dope song. Cashmere Thoughts. I love this song because it puts Jay in his pimp vibe, man. And the way he rides this beat by Clark Kent is unbelievable. He really sinks into this beat. To me, he's talking the usual fly talk, but this is when I really realized how nice Jay was with words. So definitely Cashmere Thoughts is one that definitely shouldn't go overlooked on this album. What I love about this last song, this is the last song. What I love about the last song on the album, "Regrets," it was the chorus on this one is gold. The overall message: in order to survive, you got to learn to live with regrets. It's basically taking in the beginning. We're talking about can't knock the hustle. And then we get into scenarios throughout the album that talk about how the game can change so quickly, right? And this one is you got to learn to live with regret. So I love how this song was the one that ended the album. And I love how he would go on to just really like sell the entire story on this last song called Regret. So again, Reasonable Doubt from start to finish, it paints that picture. It is one of the best storytelling albums of all time. Very seldom do you get that with albums anymore. You don't get the concept albums, you don't get the from start to finish. And Jay has done it numerous times. I feel like he did it with the American Gangster album as well. I feel like, but yeah, Reasonable Doubt to me, greatest rap album of all time. Other people would agree. Some people don't even like Jay as an artist, but and we're coming off the heels of the Grammys when this episode is actually being recorded, where Jay delivered the speech where he was talking about how certain artists get cheated. I don't feel like Jay ever really gets his just due. I know he was talking about his wife in a sense of winning album of the year, but Jay's one of a couple of Grammys, but some of those have come on the collaborations of Kanye and just Kanye's presence. So I don't think Jay's ever really been rewarded for his work as well. So it can go a long way. There are several artists I feel like have not been rewarded for their work in particular. So, but that's it. Reasonable Doubt, greatest rap album of all time. Agree or disagree? Let me know what you think. I'm BJ the DJ. This has been the Rewrap. I'll catch you on the B side.